Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we are diving into another step-by-step DIY guide for the BMW X5M, focusing on removing and installing ignition coils. The best part? You only need one tool, a 10mm socket, to get the job done. Let me show you how straightforward it is. So this is the V8 engine in my X5M with 220,000 kilometers on the clock. It's long overdue for new ignition coils. The last time these were replaced was likely back at 100,000 kilometers. Looking at this engine, you might think it's a complicated job with all these wires and hoses running everywhere, but trust me, it's actually one of the easiest DIY tasks you can do on this car. And like I mentioned, all you need is a 10mm socket to remove a few components and make room to access the ignition coils. Since this is a V8, we'll be working on both sides or banks of the engine. Each side looks slightly different, but the process is straightforward and simple. Let me show you how it's done. To start, grab your 10mm socket. You'll need it to remove the bolts securing the intercooler coolant reservoir and the vacuum canisters on both sides of the engine. These components need to be moved out of the way to access the ignition coils. Once they're loose, carefully set them aside. With these components moved, you can now access the ignition coils. Start by disconnecting the electrical connector on the coil, then pull the coil out. Some might need a little wiggle, but they should come out easily. Next, grab your new ignition coil and pop it into place. Reconnect the electrical connector, and that's it for that coil. Repeat this process for all 8 ignition coils. Make sure the coils are well seated in their place. Sometimes you just have to push it a little hard until you feel a little nudge that it's well seated in its position. After installing all the ignition coils, I was re-securing the vacuum canister on the second bank of the engine when I noticed one of the hoses connected to the canister had broken off at the connection. It had come loose and this needed to be fixed before I could finish the job. To fix it, I started by cleaning the connection on the vacuum canister and carefully removing the damaged portion of the old hose. I then cut a fresh end on the loose side of the hose. This simple step made it easy to slip the hose back onto the vacuum canister securely. It was as good as new and I was ready to move on. With everything back in place, I jumped into the car to start it and make sure everything was working fine. Just moments after the engine fired up, the check engine light came on and the engine went into limp mode. Not ideal, but thankfully I had my generic OBD2 reader handy. I quickly connected the OBD2 reader to the car and checked the error codes. It turned out that the cylinder 5 was misfiring. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So 5 is this one here. Luckily, the ignition coil for cylinder 5 was easily accessible, so I didn't have to remove anything to check it. Looks like the connector wasn't seated properly. So I'll try that again. I think it's seated now. Like the connectors are going in all the way. Upon inspection, I found that the electrical connector on the cylinder 5 ignition coil wasn't seated properly. All it needed was a firm push to click into place and the issue was resolved. So turn the ignition on. After fixing the connector, I went back to the car, erased all the error codes using the OBD2 reader. I started the engine again and this time there were no more codes and the engine ran perfectly. After finishing the job, I took the X5M out for a test drive and wow, what a difference. The engine is more responsive, the power delivery is smoother, and it feels like it's got a second wind. If your X5M is feeling a bit sluggish and you're due to new ignition coils, I highly recommend giving this a try. Remember, it's incredibly easy. All you need is a 10mm socket to move a few components out of the way. My X5M still has some sluggishness in acceleration from a standstill, so my next major project will be installing catch cans to tackle any oil blow-by issues. But before that, this car is due for a routine service. In my next video, I will show you how to do an engine oil and filter change. Not only will it keep your engine healthy, but it will save you a ton of money compared to going to a mechanic. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more clean instructional DIY content like this. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.